Hi, I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber. I'm here with my friend Roger Thornton, who is the CTO of AlienVault. Roger, how are you doing?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Ed. I'm doing great.
It's great to see you. You and I talk a lot. It's nice to sit and chat in front of a camera.
And it's always great to get back to New York, see old friends, and great to be spending the morning with you.
Hey, let's talk industry. So you know as much about this industry as anybody. You're CTO of a very cool security tech company, and you're on a lot of boards, and you're intertwined. What are some of your thoughts? We're sitting here sort of in the latter portion of 2017. What do you think about the cybersecurity industry right now?
A good story that I think captures the essence of what's going on. I was delayed for about 3 hours because of thunderstorms, and I was sitting on the tarmac, made a bunch of phone calls. And one of my calls was to a friend that runs a sales team for a great company, a startup company. Great product, great team. You know, they got good momentum. And his Q3 was just a disaster. You know, they probably only transact one deal in Q3. And so we were talking, you know, and I was worried that, well, you know, maybe there's a change in the market or some big competitor. And he was walking me through all his deals. And he said this thing. He said, Roger, you know what is really going on? There's this sense of buyer's fatigue out there. And he went through his various customers, and he didn't lose any of them. They were just having a trouble getting all the products through the evaluation cycle that they were interested in. There's just too many vendors, too many products, and it's kind of slowing things down. And if you think about it, whether you commute home on a freeway or go through the subway system, there's that certain time of day in the afternoon where it just gets backed up and bottlenecked, and I think the industry's going that way. My company right now, we're looking at some potential OEM agreements or partnerships where we can bring some more technology in and further simplify for our customers the whole setup. And I have been inundated with vendors in that case it's in the endpoint space. And every company I look at, they've good people, interesting stuff, but literally the number of them and just getting them through the process is a lot. So I think what we're seeing is about 2 years ago, the venture community really stepped up the amount of investment that's going into cybersecurity. And we're starting to see the outcome of that, which is good. Customers get more choice and there's more competition, but we're starting to see a depth in each product category that could take you a real significant amount of time to go through.
You think point and click provisioning, like very lighter, simpler means for buying, almost like the Amazon.com effect for buying cybersecurity, think that'll make it a little easier, so you don't have to go through a long life cycle to select a product?
You might have been listening in on my call, because what I pondered with my friend was at his company, this is not an AlienVault, at his company, they were following a very traditional enterprise sales cycle. Get to know the customer, have an exploration meeting, set up a POC, and work your way through. Lots of dinners and golf if it's springtime or summer. And I think from my experience at AlienVault, that model may be good for really big, super expensive, complicated things. But I think more products have to go through a flow where the customer can learn on their own time and speed, evaluate on their own time and speed, and ideally even use the product to a certain extent for free, self-provisioned, before the vendor and the customer really start to do a dance. Because then what you have is, you have, as a vendor, you can have a lot more customers going through their own self-exploration, and you only need to be staffed for handling the ones that step forward and want to buy. From a customer's point of view, you got less vendors calling you, less complicated POCs that you're trying to run, and less people twisting your arms about a purchase order before the end of the quarter. So I think it's inevitable. I know from personal experience, it's not easy to do, right? technically, you've got to be able to make the product in such a way that it can just kind of bounce out of the box and work. But frankly, the harder thing is internally in your company, you got to have everybody okay with, well, they're going to use it for free. And that's that's not everyone's up for that challenge.
With so many companies, do the expectations for exit change? Like instead of exiting with a 10x multiple purchase and everybody driving off rich, is it a little dampened? Is it more about doing things you maybe really enjoy and sliding into a situation that allows you to perpetuate your work, which maybe dampens the exit expectation for founders?
It's a great question, and I only have my anecdotal experience, right? This is a big...
But it's probably right, given your experience.
Yeah, and the way I would describe founders and startup companies, pardon the dramaticness of the metaphor, is pilots of airplanes. Yeah. There's no pilot that thinks he's going to crash the plane, right? and fortunately, it's very rare that a pilot crashes the plane. Unfortunately, there are lots of pilot entrepreneurs that crash the plane. And so, in my personal experience meeting with entrepreneurs, they are certain of success and looking for that 10x outcome, and they're going to change the world until the writing is so
pretty clear,
crazily on the wall that it's not going to work out. So they're kind of in binary mode. Everything's going to be great, or oh my God, the company's gone. I think that's the nature of the activity. A person that doesn't have unbelievable optimism, or maybe the ability to the ability for self-delusion at times, is never going to make it through the process, right?
Yeah,
so unfortunately, they all feel pretty sure of themselves. But when you look, endpoint's a great space, right? And a lot of the vendors in that space I have a ton of respect for. Some really great products. Frankly, it's one of those spaces that I kind of fall in love with all of them. I'm glad I'm not a customer having to buy one. But one thing to be sure, there are several of those vendors that have a scale and a reach and a marketing budget and a sales team that the next 5, 10, 20 little guys, even if the products are better, there's a moat that you've got to be able to cross.
Symantec comes to mind. It's
Symantec, and if you look at the up-and-comers, Cylance and the amount of momentum they have, you've got the folks at Carbon Black with really good product, really good momentum, and over the last couple months, I've probably spoke with right around 10 startup endpoint companies. Great technology.
They are all good.
And and there's none I can look at and say, wow, that's terrible, it's bad. In fact, some of them I look at just blow my mind. But when I look at the chasm they've got to cross, because of the crowdedness in the market and the momentum of those guys ahead, it's very daunting.
It's a challenge. Now, a lot of them are doing machine learning, AI, that kind of thing. You and I chat about that occasionally. What do you think? Is that on one end of the spectrum, it solves everything. On the other end of the spectrum's hype. Most people in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Let me start by saying I'm in the middle somewhere, but probably in a nuanced, contrarian point of view. I don't think I can talk about AI without mentioning, if you're about my age, and you and I are about the same age, you lived through the original AI winter.
Oh, yeah.
And the original AI winter came, it was in the 1980s, early 90s, that machines were getting smarter and they were going to start to replace human beings. And if you really understand a computer and how it's made and how it's architected, it's a gloriously beautiful counting machine, right? And it can be through software and interfaces. It can be real easy to believe that there's a soul there of sorts that can leap to inferences. And I remember the first talk I ever went to at AI was a young engineer at Apple Computer, and the talk was entitled "How to Wreck a Nice Beach." And then you think of a beautiful beach with beer cans all over it, and you realize That's also how to recognize speech from a computer's point of view. Telling those two apart to this day is still really, really difficult. So with that temperament, so anybody of a certain generation, you've seen this hype and then the abject failure of delivering on that. We saw that before. You come forward and a couple big milestones. So a computer can really beat a grandmaster at chess. It's a fixed computational exercise.
That's true.
Amazingly complicated.
Yeah.
But the fact that a computation machine couldn't beat a human for so long at a closed, fixed mathematical computational game is amazing. Not the fact that the computer eventually
Parallelism has gotten better. The algorithms have gotten better. Yeah.
So
Ability to deal with big data sets gotten better. All good algorithms.
And then the next piece that comes along, and this is where I sort of flip to positive. There's a lot of stuff that's purported to us under the umbrella of AI that, from my days in college, it's statistical analysis on large data sets.
Right.
And if we want to call that AI, that's great, because the output of those calculations can have profound impact on businesses, on life, on the betterment of mankind. I don't think it's fair to kind of hold those developments up and say, look, computers are thinking and they're capable of inference and they're have this creative expression that humans do. But it does fall in the umbrella of AI today, and it's very, very, very important. Then you move into the really cool stuff where we're really trying to use the computer's ability to do some thinking, and you start to see some really interesting results, right? As consumers, we see this all over the place. The vendors that are showing us the ads we really want to see, even I have to admit that they're getting better. There's things that some of those algorithms are so painfully obvious, and boy, if you've got a friend that's looking for a tent, do not go log into your account.
I think if Donald Knuth had been sort of in his prime today, maybe writing another volume, I think the volume would have been around training. Like, I think sorting and searching are fundamental primitives, and I think training is another one. That's one I know he would have dug into that. The idea that I can give you a training set and some labels. And I say this data goes with these labels. So now go off, chomp on that a little bit, and now I'm going to give you some new data, figure out the labels. Like, that seems so fundamental, and it's so at the base of all machine learning, deep learning, AI, all of it hinges on the ability to make those, you can call them inferences. And famously, remember Dijkstra making fun of people calling that thinking. He would say, computers can think the way submarines can swim, famously. So I think a lot of that is just the alchemy of chemistry and the numerology of mathematics kind of finding their way out. And what you're left with are really good algorithms. And you're right, who cares what you call them? But I think we're going to see a sorting out in cybersecurity where there's companies that I think sort of get it and understand that it's mathematics and computer science, and then they're the ones who think they're building some, humanoid kind of capability. It was kind of ridiculous, in my opinion. I know Elon Musk and other people disagree with that and think that it is something. My answer to the Elon Musk thing is that Newton spent about half of his career on alchemy, right? So you can easily be seduced into areas of science, of scientific discipline that can be a little rough.
Well, here's a great circular reference to that. So a great scientist and thinker like Newton spent his time on silly pursuits.
Potions.
Those silly pursuits are what stimulate the creativity and the mind to actually be able to make the
make calculus, right?
Make calculus. So I
just in his spare time, right? I think I'll do physics and then do calculus. Right? In the middle, I'll make potions.
So there's
Crazy.
there's one point I want to make sure to make, and we were talking about the AI umbrella, and that's one that I think gets overlooked too much. And I wish I could cite the paper that I read. It might have been an article somewhere, but I was a young engineer, and it was about Boeing at the time, and they were talking about their design imperative, or their design angle was to, instead of trying to replace the pilot, to try to make the pilot 1,000 times more efficient. And in this body of work that I read, because it wasn't just really one article, I became interested in it and learned everything I could. You know, any operation where you pull a human being out has the areas that are really easy to do, and then you asymptotically hit this very hard challenge at some point. And their hypothesis was, well, if the human's involved and they added some value, and the computer's involved and it adds some value, focus on making the two of them work magically together. And I think Einstein had a quote about computers and humans. One of them calculates very poorly, but it has all sorts of very wonderful leaps of logic in the area of inference. The other one's a meticulous, never tiring computational machine. If you can put those two capabilities together in a really good way, you can perform magical stuff. And to bring that back to cybersecurity, so one of the things that the experts who are both versed well in cybersecurity and machine learning will tell you, we can feed the engine training data, and then I can feed it photos, and it's going to recognize a cat that it's never seen before as a cat. But the problem in cybersecurity is I can feed it training data of, metaphorically, cats. Now the enemy's going to invent a unicorn, and I'm going to put pictures of unicorns in it. He's not going to understand it. And so the fact that cybersecurity goes back to that chess game, the grandmasters beat the computer on a pretty trivial computational domain. It's going to be a long time before the computers by themselves can beat crafty humans that are able to understand and read the research, understand how those machines are put together.
I think that that's a reasonable perspective. The likelihood of human beings kind of affecting and influencing, say, critical infrastructure seems to me a greater danger than computers taking over, or even in the cybersecurity realm, the AI getting to the point where it does supplant a human being. That seems about as likely as, say, when the first Apollo missions were being put together, or the first Mercury, before Gemini. In Mercury, they didn't want to put a window in the thing. They just wanted to strap the astronaut in and say, just shut up and sit there. We'll fly up like you're in a can. Can you imagine Gemini and Apollo if we had followed that paradigm without the human beings being embedded in everything? So that's how I view cybersecurity moving forward. I love the Boeing concept of being surrounded by technology that orchestrates and makes you more capable, like almost being on a moving sidewalk in an airport. It really moves you along. I think that's the best chance we have of averting, big problems in cyber. I mean, we haven't talked much about consequence. Maybe we'll close on that. I'm interested in your thoughts on whether you're kind of an optimist or a pessimist when you think about big critical infrastructure problems, because that's what looms. You and I deal day to day with issues that, we want to make sure you don't lose your data, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. That's important. The customer doesn't really affect geopolitics or the world or whatever. But a power company, being hacked and losing their ability to operate, a little more consequential. And I know you deal with both. What do you think? Are you optimistic that won't happen?
The best way to put it is most of us are plagued with being human beings, so we don't think about the black swan events and the impact, right? So when you really sit down, you think about it, nothing like a really good book to get you there. Ted Koppel's Lights Out is a great one to
I did read that.
Contemplate after you read that. I come down like this. I believe that from the really catastrophic attacks we still live in an era where you'd have to be a pretty sophisticated operator to pull off those attacks. Were you to pull off that attack, there's going to be consequences that are kinetic. You're going to be in a war. So I think we're still
Insiders could do it.
Insiders and crazy organizations, political organizations or terrorist organizations. I would suspect in the next 10 years we're going to move into the window where those groups may have the capabilities and skills to do those kinds of attacks, and that would be it's just a terrible thing. I do believe, though, on the other hand, the stuff that's just happening, identity theft, which I get hit by this year, the crypto stuff, robbing from people, this crime that is able to find a way to exist in an area and in a remoteness that it escapes law enforcement. I think this is adding up. I remember one of the AT&T conferences when you threw the $1 trillion number out for cyber crime, and everyone thought that was crazy. It's not. It is when you add up all of that money, and if you could think about, money is just a resource, right? Money is like kinetic energy. With money, I can build a bridge. With money, I can give a person a vaccination. With money, I can build a park. When you think of that, trillions of dollars that are being siphoned off global economies and all of the things that we need to be focusing on today, I worry more about the death of 1,000 cuts. That's already here today.
Yeah. Hey, you enjoying what you're doing?
I love it. Yeah.
You always look like you do enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
Always smiling, always doing something interesting.
Thanks. Well, we were talking before we went on camera. One of the things I love most about what we do at AlienVault, when you and I were working together in the past with my previous company, Fortify, we really helped the top companies who were pretty sophisticated, smart about security, get a little bit better.
Yeah.
At AlienVault, we focus on the average everyday company that may have a lot of employees, but it doesn't have enough people in the security staff, and it's not going to be able to. So trying to figure out how to lessen that security fatigue, reduce the number of products, make it easier, host everything in the cloud, let you focus on doing security and less work integrating products. It makes you feel good, especially
really
when you
satisfying work.
It is.
Well, you're the right guy to do it. I hope you keep doing it. We all
Plenty.
benefit from what you do.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you stopping by and chatting.
Appreciate it, Ed.
Awesome, man. Thanks for
Thanks
coming by.
so much.
And we'll see you next time.